We are now joined by Syracuse alum Mike Tirico of NBC with Ethan Frank. I'm Jack Gordon. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time. You're always so generous and giving time to talk to us students, so we really appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Oh, darn, I forgot to put my hat on. I'm sorry, boys.
There you
Good to see
go.
you both. Glad you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying Vegas. Hope you haven't lost too much money yet.
Only to the vendors. Food's a little bit
Okay,
expensive
that's
here.
okay. It is, and anything that's expensive is marked up, I'm sure, with Super Bowl week being there. It's really interesting. We never thought we'd see Vegas host a Super Bowl because of gambling, and the NFL really avoiding gambling as part of the conversation with the league. But obviously, they've embraced it as a business move over the last few years. They're involved with so many institutions that are hosting gambling sites. And while we still can't say on the air, hey, Team X is a this point favorite or that point favorite, the reality is gambling is very much a part of NFL Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays. And it's going to stay that way. And the Super Bowl being in Vegas, if you will, doubles down on that proposition.
Yeah, we actually talked to Andrew Siciliano last week, and he was saying it was almost a joke to think that the Super Bowl could be in Las Vegas, and even a franchise, 10, 20 years ago. If you talked to yourself 20 years ago, how surprised would you be in knowing that there's a Super Bowl in Las Vegas this year?
Stunned. I never thought it would happen. I really didn't, for the reasons we're all talking about here, times 1,000. It just didn't seem like you'd ever see a place where the NFL would embrace this. And like you said, the franchise with the Raiders as well on top of that. But look, we've seen over time that gambling on sports is going to happen, whether you hide it in the bushes and the weeds or you bring it out in public. And some believe that bringing it out in the public actually gives them a better job to get a handle on it. And the sport I look at the most, guys, is tennis. Tennis has jumped a couple of times into situations where they saw people were gambling and irregularities on betting on really minor mixed doubles matches or men's doubles at a rare event that wasn't one of the top events. And they've been able to jump in there with their tennis integrity unit and be on top of it. So some sports feel and some folks feel that this is the way to go in the future. Put it out in the open and see how it works. Europe has done that for years. European Premier League soccer is wagered on in the open public. There have even been betting houses that sponsor teams on their kits in soccer. So it's there, and I do believe that there is a reasonable argument to say, with it out in the public, it may be better to control. That, of course, comes until we get a scandal of some sort that sets the sports world on its ear. But hopefully there are people watching that, and there are strict rules in place. As you heard the commissioner say yesterday, on Monday, I should say, the commissioner made it clear that there were NFL personnel who didn't work with the teams necessarily, but were fined, harmed, or I should say harmed is the wrong word, suspended, or in some ways let go because they were caught gambling on the NFL or other sports in general.
It's a really interesting situation when you look at the sheer amount of people that are here as well, that it's like, there's just so much potential for something to happen. Moving to, this week and it being in Las Vegas, you're as a part of NBC not broadcasting the game this week. That happens every 3 to 4 years when you guys get that chance. What is a week for you like when you're not broadcasting the Super Bowl? What kind of responsibilities do you have?
It's fun. It becomes more enjoyable, and especially for us because with NBC, our Super Bowls have lined up with our Olympic games. So Super Bowl 52, which was our second to last one, I wasn't able to be at because we were covering the Olympics in South Korea in 2018. Super Bowl 56, we were there, and it was part of the Olympics being in Beijing, and we did both. We were lucky enough to host the Super Bowl and host the Olympics in the same day. Did it all from LA. It was really a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I'll never, ever forget being a part of. These other years, we get to have some fun, to be quite honest with you. The league has the NFL Honors on Thursday night where you get the MVP and all the big awards and go there. And then Friday, you'll have the league commissioners party with all the owners and GMs and head coaches there. And you get to see everybody around the league. You're never really off duty, but you're kind of off duty. And then there's always stuff going on in the Super Bowl city. And then Sunday, go to the game. I'll sit there with my wife and Chris Collinsworth, and we get to all sit and watch the game as fans with family and friends, which is kind of a fun experience after going to the game to work for 20 some odd weeks a year.
Now, you've called some of the world's biggest games, and Super Bowl, I assume, is still on that checklist for you. Do you ever find yourself looking ahead to 2026 a little bit?
Certainly you do. It's at the top of the list. There's no doubt about it. For a career where I've been fortunate to be involved in so many great things, whether they're TV or radio, NBA Finals, college football championship, Masters, all the major championships like the Open, Grand Slams in tennis, getting to host the Olympics. So all that stuff is a full career no matter what. But the opportunity to call the Super Bowl and be a part of American sports' biggest day is something that I hope to get the chance to do here in a couple of years. And yeah, you certainly think about it. You think about what will it be like to prepare, and how will you get yourself organized, and can you treat it just like another game, which is what the coaches and players and other broadcasters say so often. But obviously that's easier said than done, right? You don't want to leave any stone unturned for any game. But if it's the biggest game of them all, the Super Bowl, then you want to make sure you have everything dialed in. I had a fun time talking to Kevin Burkhardt of Fox, who does a great job. And it was his first Super Bowl last year. And we spent about 15 minutes at the NFL owners meetings last March talking about that exact experience, what the day was like. And it was just a little bit of a preview for me, because really I think Joe Buck and Jim Nantz and Al Michaels had done a bunch of Super Bowls in a row. There really wasn't anyone doing it for their first time in quite some time until Kevin. And then hopefully in a couple of years, it'll be me in that same situation. So we had a great visit and a great conversation. And you certainly think about what that day, week, and all that will be like, and who will end up in the Super Bowl that you get to be a part of.
That's amazing. When you look at this game in particular,
Yeah,
and you look at some of the storylines around it, we were at opening night on Monday, and potentially the biggest crowd out of anyone was around Travis Kelce for obvious reasons. You were one of the first to have a game where his girlfriend Taylor Swift was at. What was that like? Having to intertwine her with the broadcast in terms of preparation and then in the moment as well. And how do you expect things to be handled on Sunday?
Yeah, great question. I will point out that Taylor was on tour with us. She did the Eras tour, then she did the Sunday Night Football tour. She showed up like 3 times in 10 weeks, so we'll take full credit for that. It was kind of, I guess, a really big out of nowhere attention grabbing event. The first time she showed up, that was at a Bears game. It was almost like it was hidden in the background. Then the first real game after that was our game against the Jets at MetLife in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. So we talked about it, we planned, and certainly at that point, all the Taylor song titles being used by announcers had gotten played out by that point. So we had to find a couple of things. So we just did an over-the-top, tongue-in-cheek tease with the folks in The Voice on NBC and Carson Daly. Got all the song titles out of the way before the game kicked off. Had a good laugh with that. But then I buried a couple of lyrics in the show. A couple of things happened. I buried some lyrics in a couple of places, going to break, and then later on in the show, going off the air. A few people noticed, but the Swifties did, so it was fine. But then after that, it was nothing. After that, the other games we did was absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, the game in Kansas City, it was on Peacock in the playoffs. There were people walking up the aisle underneath us and holding up their cameras. And I thought they were trying to take pictures of me and Jason Garrett. And I'm like, what the heck? The game was 8 below, air temperature 7 below. I said, is maybe the heaters that are up here? Does it look like we're radiating, that we're going to be like zapped off the face of the earth? What's the deal here? It turns out I finally figured out Taylor was sitting beneath us. I didn't even know where she sat in Arrowhead. I had no idea where the suite was. But no, it's cool. It's great for the sport. It really is. New York Times did a great piece. People can look up. It averaged 35 seconds a game that she's on the screen in a 3-hour, 15-minute broadcast. I don't think people are missing a lot of football. And to have the, without question, biggest drawing entertainer in America right now, significantly tied to the NFL, bringing all of her fans, or many of her fans, and certainly some daughters who may have watched a football game or two with their dad who now are rooting for a team and they're getting involved in what we love with the NFL. It's great. Why not? And football-wise, I'll say this. Travis played his best game in the AFC Championship game. If he doesn't play as well as he did, they don't win that game. He kept drives alive. He was, I think, 11 for 11, 11 targets, 11 receptions, right? That was awesome against a good player in Kyle Hamilton, who was covering him well. So I think while he didn't have his best year, I thought he had his best game when it mattered most. And I would not be surprised to see that happen again next week, or this week, I should say.
Now, sticking with the, actual X's and O's of the game like you led into there, what kind of storylines on the field are you looking at the most?
Let's take it when each team has the ball, right, guys? Why don't we start with the ball for Kansas City on offense? The Chiefs have a really good team across the board offensively, but they're not as good at the wide receiver position as they have been. Rashee Rice will be key. There are three guys who San Francisco defensively has to deal with. It's Kelce, 87. It's 10, Isaiah Pacheco, and it's 4, Rashee Rice. Those three guys make this team go. That's where San Francisco's focus has to be. I think San Francisco's got a great pair of linebackers in Warner and Greenlaw, 54 and 57. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, two numbers to watch for them. And how will those guys handle Pacheco in the run game and the passes in the middle with Kelce? We had a game where Greenlaw against Dallas just flummoxed the Cowboys with his ability to patrol the middle. I think that's the important part of this game when Kansas City has the ball. Flip it over to San Francisco. Which 49ers offense do we see? The one that we saw the first 6 quarters of the NFC playoffs was not very good. Only until that last drive against Green Bay did they look like the Niners offense we've come to know. And the first half was poor in the NFC Championship game against Detroit. They were amazing in the second half. So are they dealing it? Are they getting it out? Are they getting the ball out there? And obviously we know they're big players in Kittle, Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. To me, the key becomes what I think was the surprise story this year, and that's the Kansas City defense. Their defense was terrific. Steve Spagnuolo, former head coach, outstanding defensive coordinators, won multiple Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator. I thought he did as good a job as anybody this year in the NFL in terms of coordinators. Most of his roster, first, second, or third-year guys. They kept growing. They kept playing well. L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, 38 and 22. Two players who are unique players. They can cover different positions, different places on the field. If they have good games and their coverage is strong on the 49ers, it allows the linebackers like Nick Bolton to pay more attention to the run and slows them down. I think we're in store for a great game. I really do. I think all 4 units are good. I think the one that I have the least confidence in of the 4 is the 49ers defense. Detroit walked up and down the field on them. Green Bay moved the ball on them, kept them away from getting the offense on the field. I think it's up to the San Francisco defense to win this game for the 49ers.
It'll be really interesting to watch how it plays out. Looking at a lot of the Steve Spagnuolo had a lot of attention at opening night last night. There are a lot of people trying to talk to him. Do you have any more football questions? I wanted to switch to some Syracuse stuff.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we talked to Adam Shine this morning. We talked to your colleague at NBC, Ahmed Fareed, yesterday. And we were talking to them about their Syracuse experiences. Adam Shine was immediate when we asked him about his favorite WAER road trip. He immediately said going to Pauley Pavilion to go to UCLA. Is there a road trip that you remember or a trip that stands out from your time as a student?
Easy one for me is 1986. And I know that's a really long time ago. But that's the one that sticks out for me because one, I was a sophomore. I was just starting to do call the games, and we called the Syracuse Temple football game. Although not very well attended, it was at the Vet in Philadelphia. So it was the first time I got to call a game in an NFL stadium, which was really cool. The Vet's the precursor to the Link, but the Phillies and the Eagles played there at the time. Syracuse won on a Tim Vessling field goal at the end of the game. It was before walk-off field goals were called walk-off field goals. So you got to call a walk-off field goal at the end of the game. That we stayed with, me and Paul Peck were two of the people on the trip. We got to stay with Todd Callis, who's the voice of the Houston Astros on TV. Todd's dad, Harry, one of the greatest voices in the history of the industry, outstanding broadcaster for the Philadelphia Phillies, the voice of NFL films for a lot of their highlight shows. We got to spend the morning with Mr. Callis and have breakfast with a legend of the business, call a walk-off field goal in the afternoon, and then at night, Todd's friends are all from Philadelphia. We're at Villanova. We went to Villanova and watched the famous Game 6 of the '86 World Series, where the ball went between Bill Buckner's legs, hit by Mookie Wilson. The Mets won the game, and they went on to win Game 7 2 days later after a rain out on Sunday. So it was all in one perfect day. So without question, that's the day that I remember probably more than any of the other WAR road trips. Although the Final Four in New Orleans in '87 was pretty darn special too.
Yeah, not too shabby getting the call of Final Four. Sticking with Syracuse, it's been a long time since Syracuse football was a topic of discussion in the winter.
Yeah.
You know, people are super excited about Fran Brown and Kyle McCord, the whole transfer class. What's your take on kind of this new look orange?
You mean the fact that Syracuse is a destination for all transfer portal people and all good stuff in football? It's great, isn't it? Coach Brown has done a remarkable job at hitting the ground running and doing what needed to be done. And that's change the narrative and create a new culture. So McCord, the recruits, the new energy around the program, involvement in the community, it's all 10 out of 10. It's all great. Now you're going to have to win football games and sustain that, right? Friendly schedule, works out pretty well. Great opportunity for a first-year head coach. I think it's all right there. Fran has not been a head coach. So I think the important thing is going to be those coordinators, how they coach, what they set up, the kind of style that Syracuse plays, because the quality of player is there now to be a better team. And this wasn't a bad team last year. They were pretty close to being an 8 or 9 win team. So the quality of player, since it's gone up in the program, tells you that the program is better. So the challenge is going to be, we all make mistakes. The first time you guys did a sportscast, the first time you guys called a game, the first time I called a college game or an NFL game, first time I hosted the Olympics, we all made rookie mistakes. Fran Brown's going to make rookie mistakes. Those are okay. The question is, how big are they? What are they? And do we have the right people around this program to help Fran succeed and learn? And I think they're there. I think they're in place. But needless to say, it's great when a quarterback who played in the biggest regular season game of the year, Michigan, Ohio State, is going to take his next snap for us. That's so damn cool and proves that Syracuse in the recruiting world, what the dome means, the legacy of Syracuse football can find a place in this sport that is sadly a shadow of what it once was. There may be more money coming into college football, guys. There may be more attention on it, but the sport as a whole is not better. The sport is leaderless. It's being run into the ground by people who are watching out for their school and their conference, but not the sport as a whole. I don't blame them for doing what they're doing, but somebody's got to be a big boy and sit up and say, hey, guys, we're killing this sport. For Washington State and Oregon State to have no place to play, for the ACC and the Big 12 to be pushed to the side while the Big 10 and SEC chart the course for the future of the sport. This is stupid. It really is, because you know what's going to happen? All those Big 12 and ACC markets, all 35, and then the rest of the power, the group of 5 or group of 6, if they don't have access to the best in football to play for a championship, they're going to lose interest. And you're going to see viewership and interest in the sport go down in a lot of markets. It'll be great in Columbus. It'll be great in Ann Arbor. It'll be great in Minneapolis and all the places in the SEC and the states that are the SEC. But I really worry about the future of college football in general. So I hope, back to the initial question, that Fran Brown's juice and energy and bringing people will help give Syracuse a place that no matter where we end up, we can be a part of the conversation of where college football goes in the next 20 or 30 years. It's too important to the state. It's too important to the university. It's too important to the Northeast to lose Syracuse as a big fish in the college football pond.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right. We got one more question for you. This is one that, like we mentioned, we talked to Adam Shine this morning. His answer to said question was heads every time. Now we have to ask you, did you have a Fagan's go-to move on flip night?
You know, I wasn't a big fan. I know hard to believe,
Wow, okay.
but I will say if there is any conversation about a coin toss, tails never fails. Simple.
That's tails every time. Tails never fails.
That's his rule.
And the rule, I was taught the rule. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
I was taught the rule by my friend whose last name is Dales. Dales. So then it becomes this whole rhyme.
That's great. See, here's why I think that. If you stick with one, you're going to be right 50% of the time. You can't bounce around. You cannot bounce around.
Not a bad point.
I mean, look, a coin toss is a 50-50. Look at what are the odds? I saw talking about gambling before. I saw somebody post the odds for the coin toss. It's -104 for each one. It's the same odds for both heads or tails for the opening coin toss. It's a 50-50 proposition. It doesn't matter. It's never going to change. So if you keep bouncing around, you're never going to hit the right side of that. You may feel like it, but you won't. So it's a great call. Stick with tails. Jack, you heads.
You've been keeping track ever since.
Yeah, I keep track. I actually this is going to sound very degenerate of me. I did keep track. I have numbers for most of last year. I called tails. It came out at, it was actually over 50% sticking with tails every single time. So,
all right, my method is I stand there and whatever the person had before me, I do the opposite, or whatever it lands on before. I watch it and I say, oh, it was heads that time. Now I'm tails. So,
really trying to play the math.
Yes, always playing the math.
Do you now? I did partake in Senior Sunday often at Fagan's.
There you go.
Do you do that?
I don't think that they don't start it up now until like later in the year. I think is the problem.
It's preposterous.
That's what Shine was saying. Shine was saying the same thing. He's like, "What do you mean they don't? It's not as popular."
Senior Sundays was best. They played American Pie and all that good stuff. It was a classic. I failed miserably with the lighting on the video portion of this. I'm sorry, guys.
Don't worry about it.
This rare appearance of the sun in the Midwest is absolutely throwing me off here in the office today. But that's the fun part of what you guys are doing. What anybody who's involved at Syracuse is doing is that here we are, 36 years apart in age, something like that. And we have common things that we shared, whether it's WAER or covering things around the country while we're still in class and doing school, right? The traditions on campus, Syracuse football resurgence, you hope. Basketball stories covering Coach Boeheim with the program. That's the joy of what college athletics is all about. There's a bond to it that keeps generations of people who otherwise wouldn't know each other together. And that's why I get so frustrated about where college football is going, because we're going to throw away a lot of memories for a lot of people. And I hope they get it right. But like you guys are doing, even at a level we never had the chance to, you're enjoying what Newhouse and WAER and Syracuse University can bring to students. It's like the coolest thing that you guys are at the Super Bowl and that the class has done it the last few years. We're so happy of you guys and proud of you representing Syracuse and showing everybody out there, like, okay, there are a bunch of really good schools that do this, and they're all in the running for second forever because we're the best at it. It's because of people like you all. So I hope you guys enjoy the Super Bowl in Vegas. It's a once in a lifetime experience.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. We really couldn't have done it without you. We do our best to uphold the tradition, and following in your footsteps is what everyone wants to do. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate you.
Yeah, you guys are crushing it. Thanks for having me on. Have a great time in Vegas, and tails never fails.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you. We'll see you.